Good evening. This is What's Next Wednesday. Everyone, welcome back, and others, welcome to What's Next Wednesday. I'm excited to have you all with us for this next session for this year's series. Tonight's, we're tackling a big topic, financial aid and FASFA. The goal is simple: to make the process less stressful and more strategic for you and your family. We'll walk through FASFA basics, how colleges use your information, what's new this year, and how to access free and local help through grants. But also, we have an expert in the building as well from University of Richmond, Emily Martin, who will also bring the private perspective to it as well. So really looking forward to today's session, all that good stuff. So nonetheless, the other thing that I have to do is figure out how to, there we go. Yes. There it is continue to learn how to multitask as I'm working through this thing. Anyway, again, FASFA, all that good stuff, how to help yourself through this process. Today, I'm Ken Oxendine, and what we're doing here is that this program is designed to help families, caregivers support their secondary age students as they plan for life after high school, from finding the right fit to navigating financial aid. This process can be stressful for our students and the adults in their lives. Topics very monthly, and we address the many things you and your students must navigate as you make these decisions. Make sure that if you have any questions, reach out to me, email me, or even drop something in the chat. We also have a link that I'll drop later on that will allow you to also have to give us some feedback and also some ideas as well. You may have seen that link as you signed up for the process. And Lauren White, who is executive director for GRAFS, statewide organizations dedicated to helping families navigate financial aid and scholarships. Emily Martin, also senior assistant director of financial aid at the University of Richmond, bringing us the private college perspective and how student aid really works. Lauren and Emily, thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yes, happy to be here.
Excellent. Now, again, as we go through, if you have any questions, raise your hands, drop a message in the chat. So as we continue to flow through here, we can some questions or jot those questions that you have down, so that you can ask us later on if you don't want to ask at that moment. But the bigger part is understanding this process, ask the questions that need to be asked, and being able to really get the information that you need so that you can make sure that your student has all the information that they need. So let's start right at the top. Lauren, FASFA opened on October 1st this year. What's new for families in this application cycle that they need to know for those who have started and those who have yet to start?
Yes, so we are in the thick of FAFSA season, which I know is both exciting and a stressful time. So as some of you may have heard about or read in the news these last couple of years, the Department of Education has revamped the form in a lot of different ways. And while the implementation process that first year was a little rocky, they've now got the form to where it's easier and faster than I've ever seen it. So they have made a lot of big changes in the last 3 years, but between that and this year, there aren't too many huge changes. They're mostly going to involve the FSA ID and the contributor invitations. And when I say FSA ID, this is essentially just the account that you make on studentaid.gov in order to complete the FAFSA. So in previous years, you would have to wait about 1 to 3 business days for your account to verify before you could even complete the FAFSA. Now they have it so that you can create your FSA ID account and then immediately begin the FAFSA and complete that all in one sitting, which this is the first year you can do that. And then with contributor invitation, and I'll clarify as well with contributor, it typically refers to the student's parent that is completing the FAFSA, but because there are some other less common instances where another family member may be going on the FAFSA, they've now coined the term contributor to be more inclusive. But in most cases, contributor on the FAFSA is the parent. So the FAFSA is broken down into two main sections, the student half and the contributor half. In the student section, they will invite their contributor to the FAFSA, and that's how they can both do one form. In previous years, the student would have to enter a lot of information about the parent, including their social security number, which I've never had a student know off the top of their head, in order to send the invitation. So this slowed down the process a lot and kept students from completing their section in one sitting. So now they have it that the student just has to enter in the parent's email address at the end of their section to send out the invitation for their FAFSA. And then a couple other notable changes in the parent section. They will ask questions about your assets, including the net value of your business or farm if you own one. For as long as I can remember, the rule has been that you don't enter the net worth of a business or farm unless you have you don't enter it unless you have more than 100 employees. Last year, they changed it so that anybody, no matter how many employees you have, had to put their net worth of the business or farm down as an asset. And as you can imagine, that was not a very popular rule. So they have now gone back and changed it so that it is, again, you have to have over 100 employees in order to put the net worth down. So those are the biggest changes, I would say, from last year's FAFSA to this year's FAFSA. Ken, I think you're muted.
Awesome. Hey, that was super helpful, and a lot of information. And Emily, from your side, from the University of Richmond, once FAFSA is submitted, what happens next? How does your office actually use the information?
Okay, yeah, great question. So you're submitting the FAFSA online, and then it gets sent electronically to the schools that you have listed on your FAFSA. You can now list up to 20 schools on your FAFSA. Keep in mind that all schools have, got their own kind of timelines and are currently working on updating their systems, being ready to receive those FAFSAs. So probably if you've submitted your FAFSA like today, it might show up as completed and satisfied in your application portal at the schools you're applying to in the next couple of weeks. So yes, once we get your FAFSA, then the school has access to all the information on your FAFSA, your parents' income, parent assets, student income, student assets, your family size, and most importantly, your student aid index, or SAI. And that is a new acronym that came into play when they simplified the FAFSA. It used to be your expected family contribution. And I will get into the EFC down the road when we're talking about some private school stuff. But the SAI is, in general, an index number, which is used to determine your eligibility for federal student aid funds, in particular, the federal Pell Grant. The lower your SAI, the higher your demonstrated need. So how is that need calculated? Well, you start with the school's cost of attendance, a COA, minus your student aid index, and that gives us your financial need. And I do want to pause here and go off on a little tangent about cost of attendance, or COA, because that acronym is going to come up multiple times throughout as you're looking at colleges. But COA is an estimated cost for attending that particular school for the academic year, fall and spring terms. It doesn't upfront include a summer enrollment, so just fall and spring. It encompasses direct costs. So direct costs are things that you will receive a bill for from the school, like tuition, housing, a meal plan. And then the COA includes indirect costs. So things like your books and supplies and personal expenses, those little things that you'll pay for as you go throughout the semesters. The COA does vary by school. You'll find private schools have higher COAs typically. Out-of-state public schools, if you're from Virginia and you're looking at a school in Florida, might be higher. But in-state public schools will have a lower cost of attendance. So each school will take their cost of attendance minus your student aid index, and then you have your financial need, and then they will put together a package to try and meet some or all of that demonstrated need with a combination of funds. Maybe it's grants, so gift aid, like the federal Pell Grant, state grants, institutional grants, depending on the school, merit scholarships possibly, and then, from the FASFA, eligibility for your federal student loans, and maybe some federal work study funds to earn throughout the year.
Awesome. Again, it's, we don't know, and the more that we look at these parts and we understand how, those things flow in and out, and then it's how they're connected, it really is helpful. So that was some great stuff right there. Lauren, let's talk about preparation. For those parents who have the 9/11, or 9 through 11th graders, before October 1st rolls around for next year, what should those families do right now?
Yeah, so if you haven't already, and you've heard us talk about it a little bit, FSA IDs, you want to go ahead and make them now. Both you and your student will need separate accounts. It's really easy to set up, and your student does not need to be a senior yet for you both to do this. So you'll just go to studentaid.gov. In the right-hand corner, they'll have a create an account button that you'll click, and you'll start from there. It takes about 8 minutes to complete. And it's just nice to go ahead and do this now to make sure that you can log in okay. And especially for maybe parents that have made an account either for themselves a little while ago or maybe for an older sibling, you want to make sure that you remember the account information. I know sometimes emails might change, phone numbers might change. So it's better to figure out getting into that account now, especially if you do run into issues, rather than waiting until you're in the middle of FAFSA season right now trying to figure it out. You'll also want to make sure everything is good with your 2024 or this year 2024 taxes. But for juniors, it'll be the 2025 tax year when you're senior, and for sophomores, it'll be the 2026 tax year when they're seniors. But one of the best parts about this new simplified FAFSA is that a lot of the tax information is going to be directly imported from the IRS right onto the form. So you no longer really have to have your 1040 out in front of you. A lot of that information is already going to be in there. But you cannot complete the FAFSA if you have not filed the taxes for the tax year that the FAFSA needs, or if there's an extension. So you just really want to make sure that when you're filing your taxes for the tax year, you know that the student will be filing their FAFSA. You've got all your ducks in a row. Everything's good to go with that. So you don't run into that issue again when the FAFSA is already opened up and there's a little bit more of a time crunch that you're dealing with. And then divorced families will also need to determine which parent will be going on the FAFSA. So the rule is that the parent who contributed the most financial support to the student in the last 12 months is the parent that will go on the FAFSA. I know that there can be sometimes some confusion about if it's the parent that claims the child on their taxes. It's not always the case. The one rule that they want you to go off of is that more than 50% rule. And if the parent that is going on the FAFSA has remarried, their spouse will also go on the FAFSA. So these are just some kind of big chunks of information that you want to go ahead and figure out and start thinking about now before things get really, really hectic at the beginning of that senior year.
And Emily, is any of these parts, when thinking about them getting ready right now, from your standpoint, are there any things that they should know, or things that they as well need to start preparing for?
Yeah, so when it comes down to starting to look at colleges, if you've got a long list and if finances are a concern, I recommend to families going out to every school. They are required by the feds to have what's called a net price calculator. And with that net price calculator, you can put in all of your information and to get an estimate of what it may cost you for 1 year at that school. This is a great tool to use when comparing maybe a private and a public school, in case that high COA of a private school is a little bit of a sticker shock. You can see what funds, institutional funds, a private school may be able to offer. So definitely go check out net price calculators on schools' websites to get a sense. It's an estimate, but it can be a good tool to help you start planning ahead of how you might be paying for college, because it is a 4-year commitment. So you want to be thinking ahead. Yeah. And
also, if you could, so we know what the demographic of who we have. Put in what grade your students are so we can see and have an idea. And I just dropped in, that's the next week's. I'm going to drop in the U.S. Department of Education net price calculator. And this site allows you to look up the schools that the schools you're looking for and create that process. I think that's, yeah. So, but yeah, if you could for me at some point type in where your students are, so we know that part in place. But awesome. But thank you both for that information. We got some seniors. Awesome. I hope they, and so again, like especially seniors right now, any things that you're getting stuck on and stuck in, don't ask those questions, put in the chat or, so things that you're having some trouble with, so we can make sure that you can understand those parts and pieces. Go ahead, Michael, Michelle. Gossip, you can go ahead. I can't hear you. Can y'all hear? What? Okay. Well, just text it, write it in, and that's okay. Oh, you can't hear. Oh, well, I'm going to type it in. I'll type it in for her. I'll fix that part. But again, it's more information that. But there's more information, because that's tough when you're thinking about the information that you need to get, student aid. It's just like purchasing a house or a car, So, and that's the way you want to look at it. Is information that they want to make sure that that you're not cheating the system. But in the same breath, you make sure you do it because you don't know that you still might qualify for it. So make sure you're still doing things necessary to do that. Yeah, and we'll talk each school, and that's the thing. At each school, there's a grants representative, and at the end, I'll post all the grants representatives at the end, so you'll see that their name and their email. If a child creates the account and adds you as a contributor, does the parent also need to create a separate account?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So yes, the parent will have their own account and the student will have their own account. And so the account really goes off of the social security information of the account holder. So parent will enter in their social, enter in their birthday, their name, and their home address, email, phone number, and then the student will also have their own account with that same information that matches up with them. So not just like a parent account and a student account under the same kind of profile, completely separate accounts.
And then does both parents?
They were saying last year, yes, but I believe they've changed that. As long as you are married and file your taxes jointly, I believe just one parent has to have an account. But if you're married and you file separately, then that would be a situation where both parents need an account.
That's interesting. Go ahead, Deborah. Ms. Davis. The schools receive the FASFA with the schools receive the FASFA with the integrated prior year taxes income info considered if there has been a change to the household income.
Great question. You want me to take this one with changes? So the initial tax information that is going to be imported into the FASFA is going to be always the prior year income information. That being said, a lot has happened since the prior year. So if you do have a change in income, I encourage you to reach out to the schools where you're sending your FASFA to talk to them about the change. Be ready to provide documentation of the change in income, such as the prior year tax return. If we're dealing with a change in circumstances in the current year that we're in, every school will be different, but typically it's going to require you to complete some sort of reevaluation form, submit some pay stubs, letters of termination, information on any severance or payouts. And so, yes, every school will have their own separate reevaluation process. So I encourage you to stay in communication with financial aid offices right from the get-go. We are here to help you in the good times and help you navigate the challenging times. But yes, to answer your question, the FASFA is automatically going to pull in the prior year income information every time.
Also a question, because we have, once a student gets to college, are they still having the information change, or are they still changing stuff to the FASFA, and do they still have to reapply every year once they get into college?
Great. Yeah, absolutely. So yes, this is an annual task. So every October 1st, you should have that date like circled on your calendar, memorized, think October, what do I need to be doing? Oh, file a FASFA. So yes, the FASFA, your eligibility for federal student aid could change from year to year, just depending on the income and asset information that goes on the FASFA. Also, one thing that increases throughout your years in college is the student loan eligibility. It starts off as $5,500 as a freshman, $6,500 as a sophomore, and then $7,500 as a junior and senior for dependent undergraduate students. To take a side trip down the lane of private schools, you may also have a second application to be completing every year. And so that CSS profile, that has to be filed every year. Is it okay if I go down this tangent right now, Ken, with the CSS profile? So alongside FASFA, now every school, public, private, that administers federal financial aid is going to ask for the FASFA. But you are going to find, if your student is looking at some private schools or maybe some flagship public schools like UVA or William and Mary, that school may also ask for a CSS profile. And the CSS profile is administered by College Board, so same organization that does all the SATs and that stuff. The CSS profile does have a fee attached to it. It is $25 for the first application, then $16 to send it to a second school. There is a fee waiver for families that make under $100,000. Private schools ask for the CSS profile because it digs deeper and provides a more complete picture of a family's financial circumstances than the FASFA can do alone. Just like FASFA, it asks for your prior year income information. But schools that ask for the CSS profile typically also ask you to submit copies of those prior year tax documents. So be ready to submit those. And we were also touching on how a custodial parent is completing the FASFA. Same with CSS profile. Custodial parent is doing a CSS profile. But do keep in mind, some schools will also ask for that non-custodial parent to complete their own separate CSS profile, typically only one time in the first year, and then we carry forward some information. But all of that information, yes, the CSS profile and FASFA are typical application requirements for aid at private schools. And you do have to reapply every year. So if you are anticipating fluctuations in income, maybe a parent's retiring soon, definitely stop and call the financial aid offices, go in and meet with the financial aid advisors there and have a one-on-one conversation about your particular situation. We know every family situation is different, and that's why we're here to help you navigate those 4 years of school. Sorry, that was a very long answer.
That's right. And what are those loan limits again each year?
So for dependent undergraduate students, it's $5,500 in the freshman year, Typically, that consists of $3,500 as a subsidized loan, and then $2,000 as an unsubsidized loan. And then that limit increases by $1,000 the sophomore year, and then another $1,000 for the junior and senior year.
And is there a place where, when parents do want to find that information, that they can find it?
Yes. So studentaid.gov is going to become your best friend. That's, where you file your FASFA. That's where you can learn all about Pell Grants, student loans. And then when you get down the road of, if you've borrowed loans, how to repay those student loans. Yeah. Bookmark that website.
There it is. Awesome. And I'll drop that in the chat as well as send it out once we wrap up in this evening's conversation. Now, Emily, what are some of the most common mistakes you see that delay the financial aid process or create headaches for families later?
Yeah, several I think that I could highlight tonight and hopefully save families some stress and even some money down the road. The first one is honestly missing deadlines. So college deadlines all vary by institution, and missing one can mean losing access to certain aid, especially grants. So if your student is looking at various schools, create a spreadsheet, create a column for the application for admission deadline and a column for the financial aid deadline, because sometimes they aren't the same. And so, yes, make sure you're meeting deadlines. And then, yes, track those deadlines and really file those aid applications as soon as you can after October 1st, just so that's checked off the list. The second would be forgetting required forms. So don't just stop with the FASFA. Again, visit the school's website to see what else they may ask for. Do they ask for the CSS profile? Do they ask for a tax return? There could also be supplemental applications for perhaps merit aid at the school you're applying to, state grants. So at private institutions like U of R, we administer the Virginia Tuition Assistance Grant, or VTAG, and that has a separate application that the student and parent must complete usually the summer prior to enrolling in their freshman year at Richmond. So don't forget forms. Don't just stop with the FASFA. Make sure that you're filling out everything that you need to. The third, maybe one that I want to highlight, is actually just misreporting income and assets incorrectly. So the FASFA, that has a helpful tool called the FASFA, the Direct Data Exchange, where it automatically imports your income information for the majority of users. On a handful of cases, you might be required to fill in manual information. So always make sure you've got your tax documents with you. If you're filling out the CSS profile, College Board does not have a relationship with the IRS, so it does not transfer your income information. So definitely be sure to have your tax documents in front of you and are not adding an extra zero to your adjusted gross income, because that could really skew your aid eligibility significantly. Then when it comes to assets, one of the most common things I see is families accidentally including retirement account values in their assets. So just keep in mind to exclude any retirement account values from assets. And as you're going through filling out the FASFA and the CSS profile, you'll often see, like a little question mark to click to get more information about what it's asking for. Use those help text guides to help you navigate the form. And then, of course, at the end of the day, always feel free to reach out to financial aid offices, because we're here and, we've gone through this several cycles. So we're happy to answer any questions or address any confusion you may have. So those would be my big three takeaways for staying on top of things.
Lauren, is there anything that you see that you could, or that you probably can add into that information?
Oh,
you muted.
Sorry, thank you. I would say, Emily hit on a lot of them. I would definitely say families are juggling so many deadlines that senior year. And again, every school is going to have their own priority deadlines. And within that, they might have like priority deadline 1 for early decision, or early priority deadline for early action. So you just definitely want to make sure you have those deadlines written down somewhere, and that you're just paying attention to that. And again, also with the academic scholarships, I know that a lot of schools do their academic scholarships differently. Some will just say, if you apply to us on the Common App by like November 1st, December 1st, we will automatically consider you for our academic scholarships. So you want to make sure if that is the case, you're not missing that deadline. Other schools will either have like one standard scholarship application that allows a student to be considered for all of the ones that the school provides, or they'll have separate applications for each of their scholarships, and a student will have to determine which ones they're eligible for and apply separately. So I always recommend my families go to the school's website, actually look on the financial aid page, and really take in all the information that they are offering you. And when in doubt, again, like Emily said, call the financial aid office and ask them, because they will definitely put you in the right direction.
Awesome. Yeah, because, a lot of times, you assume it's one and done. And so, we just want to make sure parents double check and check, those things that you want to go over, because you think when you're doing your taxes every year, you want to make sure that, you're getting the right, credit for all your money, and you're not overdoing it. So nonetheless, but all those, that's really, again, great information to know. Emily, one more question for Ann or Lauren before we move on. Actually, when should families reach out to the financial aid office if they have questions or special circumstances like job loss or big financial changes?
Yeah, really, we have families call the day after they've learned that, their job is being terminated. Now, can we do something immediately at that stage? Maybe, maybe not. But you don't have to necessarily wait until the next aid application cycle to take action. We work with families throughout the academic year when there are sudden changes in their financial circumstances. So, right now, if you're filing the FASFA and you're applying to schools, definitely go ahead and reach out. Maybe the school just asks for the FASFA, and with the FASFA, the school's not going to know what's actually going on, currently with you. Now with the CSS profile, there is a section on that form called special circumstances and explanation. So if you know up front that maybe in 2024, there was a bonus or a property was sold and that income is not reoccurring, write that information on the CSS profile so that can alert the advisor who's reviewing your aid application to pause and think, I need to reach out to this family, have a conversation. I personally like talking to parents, to get all of the details, what happened when, what's going on currently, are you picturing that this is going to be this income situation for the, at least the next academic year. So yes, always feel free to reach out to the offices when something happens, and we can help you navigate those changes. If it is something that we can't take into consideration, then at least we can talk you through the other resources available to help with financing your education, whether that's a payment plan, or if it's looking into private loans or a Parent Plus loan for parents of students. So those are all the conversations we can have when special circumstances come up.
Awesome. Anything to add on that, Lauren? Awesome. Hey, now, a lot of our families are ahead of the curve. But what if some of them have just started or haven't even opened the book, or say, oh man, this I just was told about this like today. And as we know, it officially opened October 1st. So with families that may have already jumped or have not jumped, just started their application, and we've been touching on it piece by piece. But what about those who haven't? And has either been started, installed, and got frustrated, or whatever the case is, how do they now get caught up?
So yeah, I would certainly say it is definitely like not too late at all. You guys are actually in a very good position because, you haven't missed any of the big priority deadlines. The earliest ones are typically going to be like a month and a half, maybe like November 15th, but a lot of them are later in the year. Again, you want to get it in as early as you can, but if you haven't done it yet, do not sweat. That's why we're here to help you guys out. One, I would love to plug my organization, GRASP, and our services. So if you don't know, GRASP is an educational nonprofit specifically in Virginia, and we have advisors at all schools in Chesterfield. The advisors are in the school, typically in the counseling office, and their services are confidential and free. So if you wanted to, if you're either running into issues and you need help troubleshooting or would just feel better about having somebody there with you while you do the form, you can make an appointment with your GRASP advisor, and I'll talk a little bit more about how to do that later. But yes, you're definitely not too late. Again, first thing you want to do is go ahead and create your FSA ID and really, really pay attention to the information you're putting in and make sure that it is accurate to your social security card. Because if you do run into issues with that down the line, maybe you accidentally put in a wrong digit for the birthday or the social or your name. It is fixable, but it will involve you calling the federal student aid hotline. And it can be a little bit of a headache. So you definitely want to be really careful when you're setting up the ID so that you're not running into those issues and delaying further you submitting that form. And so then I would also say, make sure you've got a good list of schools ready to go. And one way you can speed up the process of inputting schools, especially if you know your student is applying to like 20, go ahead and look up their federal code. It is oftentimes a lot quicker and easier to just type in whatever their federal FAFSA code is than typing in the state and then the school name and then selecting it. And also, when your student is considering what schools they're going to put on the FAFSA, there is no penalty for submitting a FAFSA and then not applying. So if a school or student's kind of on the fence about applying to a school, but they might apply, I would say just put it on the FAFSA anyways. But that being said, the FAFSA is an editable document. So if a student does end up applying to a school after they've submitted the FAFSA and didn't include that school in the FAFSA, they can go ahead, add that school again and resubmit it. And then one thing that I'll just say is just, again, going on the school's website, looking over everything, and then making an appointment with your GRASP advisor.
Awesome. Like I said, it's an important reminder, that it's never too late, and being able to use the GRASP, rep that's at your school. I dropped the GRASP website and also all the advisors of each of the schools in the chat as well. So again, once a family has submitted their FAFSA, what comes next? Emily, what should a parent and the students be paying attention to at this stage?
Yeah, so first, pay attention to when you hit submit online when you're doing the FAFSA that it says, completed successfully, not there are errors remaining. You will get an email notification, I believe, about a couple days after you submitted your FAFSA. And then you'll also have access to your FAFSA submission summary. Again, review that. It will include information such as the student aid index. It'll also indicate any flags if you're missing maybe a student's signature. If there's any actions that you need to take indicated on that FAFSA submission summary, log in back to your account and take care of that. Then you can submit a correction and it will get sent to the school. The next step is confirming that FAFSA was sent to the schools that you intended to have on that FAFSA. So like I was saying earlier, most schools will have an application portal for you to see all of the, checklist of items and make sure that FAFSA has got a green check mark next to it. And also take the time to make sure if there are any other outstanding requirements that you need to take care of, such as a CSS profile or any other forms like we were mentioning earlier. And then don't just shut down then, just make sure that you keep tabs on your emails, check them regularly. As schools start to review FAFSAs and CSS profiles and tax documents, they might find that something is missing. So for example, at Richmond, as we're doing tax review, if we find, a W-2 is missing from amongst the tax documents, we will email the parent and student to, request that additional information. Same goes with if you have filed a FASFA and maybe your FASFA, you forgot to sign it electronically when you submitted it. The school will see, your FASFA is unofficial, and they might reach out, be proactive, and ask you, log back into your FASFA and take care of this so that we can have an official FASFA transaction on hand and can process your federal aid eligibility. So check your emails regularly. Maybe check your spam emails too, just in case. From time to time, my email gets stuck somewhere in junk email. So, make sure that these are emails that you're using for your FAFSA process that you're going to have for the next 4 years. So for high school students, you may have a high school email, but just make sure that now is the good time to set up a personal email account that you'll have access to for the next 4 years. Because like I said earlier, it doesn't just stop with your first year. This is, a process that you're going to do annually for the next 4 years or beyond.
Hey, again, great stuff. And that's the biggest thing is follow through, just like everything. Sales follow up. How do you keep in contact with somebody? It's the networking as pieces. In this space, it's the follow through. Set those alarms, and make sure that you're making those certain email groups from these schools VIPs. So when they come in, they're automatically being put to the top of your list. And then also just continuously, setting reminders on your phone or because some people, we don't do it, is go into your calendar, set reminders in those calendars on dates when you expect to get those things, and also help your students do that. Get your kids to start creating that process where now they're doing it and understanding how to, stay the course in the things they're doing. So it's a great habit to start and continue to do. So let's shift gears a little bit because we have parents tonight that have, some kids that's in the 9th grade, sophomores and juniors. Lauren, they're not quite ready for this, but what can they do now to make the whole process less stressful for when they get there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would really just encourage younger students to be curious and start doing research. So attending local financial aid nights that you hear about that are in your area. I know that at most of the Chesterfield schools, your GRASP advisor will hold a financial aid night, or it'll be part of a senior night. You could always sit in and listen to that part. A lot of libraries in the area will also host financial aid nights that are completely free that you can go to. Talk about college affordability as a family. It can sometimes be a bit of a difficult, awkward conversation, but it can be a really, really important one, especially when setting expectations for what schools, you want to be really looking at and focusing in on. And then kind of following that, think about all the post-secondary options that a student has. So looking at 4-year private or public colleges or universities, big or small. If you want to go out of state, in state, looking at the 2-year community colleges and trade programs that are available. There are a lot of great options, especially in-state grade options. But, sometimes a lot of them you have to seek out a little bit more. You might not know about all these options unless you're looking for them. I would also really recommend finding a copy of
yesterday, so you may want to go look.
Say that again?
There was someone who did.
Oops. Oh, sorry. I would also recommend finding a copy of ECMC's Opportunities books, which should be available in the counseling office of your student's school. These books are awesome and provide a really great overview of the college and financial aid process. And they also offer a checklist specifically for 10th graders and 11th graders. They break it down by season, so fall, winter, spring, summer. And it's a bunch of different things and a bunch of different resources that you can use to start preparing for 12th grade. I know a lot of 12th graders are handed them at the beginning of the year, but I actually find that they work even better for younger students because a lot of it is prep work that you want to start doing before you've already entered 12th grade. Yes, I can. I'll put that in the op or the.
I was like that.
I got you.
Appreciate you.
Yeah, of course.
So all that process of thinking of putting it is. It's putting together all these pieces and parts, understanding that space, and then educational components that's going to help us, get to those places. And it's all great advice. It's not about doing everything at once. It's about breaking it down in manageable steps. The earlier families start thinking about it, the more confident and less overwhelming that you'll feel about it. So the thing is, in that space, make sure, like you said, you start talking, but you also get your kids comfortable with talking about finances. A lot of people, a lot of families, especially, old school, they don't want to talk about finances at all. So the thing is, and that's one of the things when you really think about the things that break up, families, is not wanting to talk about finances. And that's just because it's such a stressor. So the more that we can figure those out, the more you can make your kids more comfortable with talking about finances and how that works, the better that they'll be in the long run. So let's clear up a big point of confusion. Lauren, we often hear about the CSS profile, right? Can you explain what it is and how it differs from the FASFA?
Yeah, so I know we kind of already mentioned like what it is, but I do definitely want to make sure we know the difference between the FAFSA and the CSS profile, and that for certain schools that do require it, you still do need to do the FAFSA. So when we're applying to the FAFSA, we're doing this so that the student can be considered for federal aid, like student loans and the Pell Grant, state aid if the student does end up staying in state in Virginia, and then aid from the school itself in a lot of instances. However, like we mentioned, there are several schools in the country, and in Virginia, it's University of Richmond, UVA, William & Mary, Washington and Lee, and Hollins now that require this additional form. So you still want to complete the FAFSA, because even though a school may require the CSS profile, you can still qualify for federal aid. You can still qualify for Virginia state grants, and you will do that through the FAFSA. But again, the CSS profile is for specific institutions, mostly private schools, but then we do have some flagship schools like UVA and William & Mary that want this form so that they can get that additional financial information. And so without that form, the school will not be able to award a student institutional aid. So a student could still just apply for a FAFSA, not do the CSS profile, qualify for the Pell Grant. But oftentimes the schools that require the CSS profile do have a lot of money to give to students that qualify. And you really, really do not want to miss out on that opportunity just by not turning in the CSS profile, which I can totally, understand. It's a pain of a document in a lot of ways, because it's very long and you need all your tax forms in front of you. But I always stress to families, it is so worth it. You need to turn that form in if they need it, because you really can potentially qualify for a lot of aid. So yes, the CSS profile is just for institutional aid. And then the FAFSA is for federal aid, state aid. And then if a school does not require the CSS profile, they're just going to be looking at the FAFSA. That's all they're going off of.
Now, Emily, same question, but y'all use a CSS, right?
Yes. So a complete need-based aid application for us is the FASFA CSS profile. In cases of situations where parents are divorced or separated, the non-custodial parent CSS profile, and then copies of the prior year tax returns for both parent and student if the student filed taxes. So yes, with all of that information, we calculate an EFC, the expected family contribution. We're using the FAFSA to determine your eligibility for federal student aid funds, using the CSS profile to determine your eligibility for institutional aid. And if we see you're from Virginia, then we package the Virginia Tuition Assistance Grant. So I know some families might be saying, well, why on earth a second application? Well, that CSS profile digs deeper than the FAFSA. It does ask for more questions. One major difference that came into play when the FAFSA was simplified, the FAFSA, while it asks if you have multiple children enrolled in college, that is no longer automatically taken into account on your FAFSA when determining that student aid index. But private schools that use the CSS profile and collect information, if you have multiple enrollment of students in undergraduate college, so maybe your rising freshman student has a sibling that's a junior in school, that multi-enrollment can really impact your institutional aid eligibility or your EFC. So that is one extra component of the CSS profile that is beneficial to families. It does also ask for information on home equity. And then, the other biggest area is that it has that special circumstances section so that we can really understand the context of your family's financial situation better. So Richmond is one of the CSS profile schools. Yes.
Awesome. Lauren, beyond FASFA and CSS, what scholarship opportunities should families keep an eye on, especially Virginia-based or national ones?
Yeah, so one form that I really do want to mention really quickly is the VASA, which stands for the Virginia Alternative State Aid Application. So this is a form that allows students that can't complete the FAFSA due to their citizenship status. They can still receive financial aid from Virginia state government and potentially the schools themselves if they use this form to apply. So that is a form that's going to be on a website called chev.edu, which I can put in the chat. And then the Chesterfield Education Foundation and the Community Foundation of Greater Richmond are two great resources for local scholarships. When I talk to a lot of students about scholarship hunting, because it is a very, it can be stressful. There's a lot of scholarships out there. Where do you even start to look? I always recommend starting local. I know there are a ton of great national scholarships that can offer a lot of money. But a lot of times, they're attracting a lot of students. A lot of students can qualify to apply and they might not have that much to give. Whereas with local scholarships, they might not offer as big of a dollar sign. It might be like a $6,000 scholarship, a $2,000 scholarship. But the chances of maybe getting this scholarship could be a little bit higher just because the pool of applicants is going to be smaller. And the more specific a scholarship is to a student, the better. So again, that's going to be Chesterfield Education Foundation and Community Foundation of Greater Richmond. Then I would also recommend going to the school's website of the high school that your student goes to. A lot of times, especially on the counseling page, they will have a list of scholarships that they are updating themselves. And those are going to be, great vetted scholarships that are oftentimes also going to be very local and specific to the area that your school student's attending. And then the GRASP website, we have our own scholarship page. So we do offer our own scholarships. So we have two, the Last Dollar Scholarship and the Community College Scholarship. And at least one school or at least one student at all of the schools that we serve will get this scholarship. The big two qualifiers is that the student has to end up going to a Virginia school. So it could be like private, public, 2-year community college, trade school, apprenticeship, as long as it's in Virginia. And they do have to meet with their GRASP advisor at least once their senior year. And then also on our website, we have a long list of updated scholarships that are vetted by us. We also include scholarship databases. So this is a really great way for your student to search for scholarships and kind of do it by specific criteria that they can filter out. College Board has a really great one that we provide a link to, but there are a couple others that you can look at as well. So I would definitely say start looking around for scholarships sooner rather than later, because again, those are some deadlines that can come and go really quickly if you're not looking. My least favorite meetings with students are sometimes the ones where they'll come in, they have their financial aid offer, they have like maybe a $10,000 bill to foot and they haven't applied to any scholarships, because by April and May, a lot of those scholarships have closed up and there are going to be some left, but they might be really specific in the eligibility criteria. So I would say start looking now and utilizing these resources that are available to you.
Excellent. Let's talk about some real life situations. All right, we talked about and we spoke on job loss, in a degree, but what about in the idea of someone's hours get cut? What happens then?
So when you say like their financial situation is not reflective in like what's being reported on the FAFSA.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So, and that happens. I've seen that happen many a time between like when you are completing the FAFSA and then what information it's actually using. It's incongruent with the situation you're living in right now. And so that would be an instance where you would reach out to the financial aid office of the schools that you're applying to and ask for a professional judgment request where they would then, ask you to probably provide paperwork of that change in income, that change in situation. They might have a separate form for you to complete. And then they will assess it and make changes to your SAI. This is going to be judged case by case for schools. So one school might grant you this professional judgment request while another school might, or they might change your SAI differently depending on the school. So it's not going to be the same for every school, but it's definitely worth reaching out and communicating to the financial aid offices about.
Are any loans directly available to students at any point?
So in order to qualify for student loans, federal student loans, the student must complete the FAFSA. And so once they complete the FAFSA and they get their financial aid offer in the spring, they can then let the school know if they want to take out loans, and if so, how much they want to take out. And this can change throughout, their time at school. Maybe they want to take out more their freshman year than they end up needing to take out their sophomore year. And they will communicate this to their financial aid office. And so that, if that's what you mean by can they take out any directly available to students at any point, it's after you complete the FAFSA, you get the financial aid offer, and then you can go ahead and see what loans are available to take out and go from there.
Okay, awesome. I've dropped a lot of and pinned a lot of the things that Lauren was speaking on, the scholarship, FASFA, the app for those who are, they're in under a different as a green card or so on and so forth, but then also the grant scholarship, those scholarships that they offer, but then also in that same space of grant scholarship, they also have scholarships and resources that you're going to have to look through, because grants, they do represent the state. So you have to look in some aspects, you're going to have to dig through some areas. Some will be a lot more poignant and direct, such as if you go to your high school, if you go to the counselor and to find out a lot of those scholarships that are at the school itself. Each school has its own scholarships that they offer, and sometimes they don't apply for them. So make sure you guys who go to your school, go to the education foundation, because sometimes it's almost we're trying to send out information like the week before deadlines from the education foundation, sometimes the day before. And sometimes you'll see, I present a scholarship to Colonial Heights, and it's like 2 kids have like 30 scholarships because they've applied for all the scholarships. So is it work? Yes. Is it worth it? Yes. So, and a lot of times, some of it times is just you write your name on something. Sometimes you're going to have to put some work. You have to tell about and talk about yourself. So those are things that, in order to take advantage of money that's out there, you got to put in a little work on the front end. So continue to look at that stuff. A lot of this stuff I'm going to send out anyways as well in an email once this once this recording finishes, and all that stuff. So in the next day or two, I always send out information for you. And one more important question: what happens if families miss the FAFSA deadline? Is it even too late is it too late to apply?
So how much missing a deadline can affect the amount of aid that you receive depends on the type of aid. So for the federal Pell Grant and for federal student loans that are offered, you'll receive the same amount no matter when you apply. However, that's not the case for state aid and institutional aid. So if you miss a school's financial aid deadline, it may prevent a student from receiving any institutional aid, or at the very least, less than they would have received if they had made that deadline. Of course, just because you miss a deadline does not mean you automatically will not qualify for any aid. Again, federal aid is still available for a student. Virginia aid, again, they set aside a certain pot of money that, is going to be more full in October than it is in April. So it can really just depend on when you send in that application. And then you do have, additional, those third-party scholarships that we just talked about from GRASP, from your specific high school, specific honor society clubs that you can apply to. And so that's not going to be money that you'll see on your financial aid offer in the spring. And so those are separate ways outside of, completing the FAFSA or the CSS profile that you can continue to get money. So this is something I would definitely recommend talking to a GRASP advisor about, if this is something that you're worried about. But again, you guys are in a really great position. For the most part, there aren't any big deadlines that you've missed. So hopefully you don't find yourself having to figure out what to do if you've missed a big priority deadline.
And Emily, how does your office handle these situations? Because that's the thing is with the sophomores and with our earlier individuals, it may be something that they may miss. So what are the things that how your office handles those type of situations?
Yeah, so deadlines are very important in our office. The application review process is time consuming, so that's why deadlines are important. They're there for a reason. We also have those deadlines set so that advisors can do a review, provide you with an offer in time for you, the student, and their parents to compare offers and make a decision by May 1, the usual enrollment deadline for schools. We will work with families if there's a delay, if they're having technical issues with something. Let the offices know so that they can, at least put a note in your file that something's going on, but you're actively working on it. Don't just shut schools out. Make sure you're in communication with them. When it gets to, your sophomore year of college, junior year, senior year, and you're missing deadlines, we're going to want to have a conversation with the student, we want to help you and set you up for success to, make sure that you're always paying attention to your deadlines and getting done what you need to do. But like Lauren was saying, at the end of the day, you can file your FASFA and we can still offer you that federal student aid. That's not going away. Yeah.
Awesome. And Lauren, when you talk about GRASP, how does it support families right here in Chesterfield?
Yeah, so like I said, there is going to be a GRASP advisor in every Chesterfield high school. They are in the counseling office. You can go, if they don't have their schedule on our website, you can always reach out to them via their email, or your student can talk to their counselor about it and they can put them in touch with the GRASP advisor. But we work on one-on-one with you. We'll have like 30-minute to an hour-long appointments where we can go over any questions that you have about the process. We can sit down with you and go from October to May, everything that you need to do, should expect. We help troubleshoot. We go over the financial aid process for families that maybe have like special circumstances, like again, like divorced families. Maybe it's a child that has been in the foster care system or a child that is adopted. Maybe you are a legal guardian and don't know how to go about the FAFSA and the student or the financial aid process. We can answer all of your questions about that and help you complete scholarships, help you find scholarships. And then in the springtime, when you get those financial aid offers, we can sit there and help compare financial aid letters to see, okay, this school, it looks like they're giving you this much in gift aid. So that's aid you don't pay back. And here are the loans that you're offered. And this is what, that final amount that you're going to have to pay the school is. What school makes the most sense for you personally and what school makes the most sense financially for your family. So we can provide all of that guidance, answer all of your questions, and hopefully just make this process as painless as possible.
Awesome. As we wrap up, I'd like to get one piece of information from each of you. What's some takeaways and what you can offer for these families to really, they'll put their pin on?
I'm going to go for meeting deadlines and form a relationship with the financial aid office where your child decides to go to school, because you're going to work with them for the next few years.
Awesome. Lauren?
Yeah, I'll second what Emily said. I definitely encourage all of my students to, reach out to the financial aid office, communicate with them, be polite and respectful, because they are going to be so helpful to you throughout all of your time in college. And so developing that relationship early is, I think, incredibly beneficial. I suggest writing everything down or logging it however you need to. So that could be, you know, when certain forums open up, deadlines for forums, usernames and passwords for different accounts, because you and your student are going to have so many documents that you need to have on hand. Maybe it's transcript, maybe it's tax forms, letters of recommendation, just having it written somewhere where you can keep track of it, because you're going to be juggling so much. And it's almost impossible to just keep it all straight in your head. So just having it somewhere reliable that you can refer to when you need to, having a calendar set up, all of that I think is going to be very beneficial.
Awesome. Thank you both of you. Thank you both of you so much for sharing your time and expertise tonight. And thank you for our families for joining us tonight. We know how busy the season is. We've been sending, we're going to continuously send out links for all the resources that we have. And remember, make sure we're doing things necessary to, you know, just stay the course in everything you do. You know, remember, have your student go into the offices, make sure they're looking at anybody and talking to their counselors and reaching out to the grants representatives. And at this time, do we have any other questions that we want to ask? Or that we have from anyone that needs a little more clarification or anything? You can write it in the chat, you raise your hand, you can unmute yourself and ask the question as well. These are great. Excellent. All right, excellent. And so again, any questions, y'all can follow up with me to really, to make sure you're able to see some and understand some other information. Again, on the college fair is November 22nd. It's October. That is incorrect. October 22nd, not November 22nd. It's October. So make sure that next week that you take advantage of going to that fair, because you will have probably about 100+ colleges that'll be at that event. It's at Thomas Dale from 6 to 8 p.m. Again, reach out to your counselors to get more information on that, get a head start. And that's a way where you can, as a student and a parent, can go ask some questions to people that's going to be at that school. And again, your grants representative is one of each. I dropped all the individuals that's at each school. I also dropped the website to where the each individual is. So make sure you're taking advantage of those parts and pieces to do those. Again, thank you to our panel and guests. November 12th, the college application process. A lot of you already surpassed us, but a lot of our other parents who are still trying to understand that space, our 9th, 10th, and 11th graders can continue to figure that out and look at it. And also remember, virtual tours. Make sure we're doing those things, taking advantage of what technology that these colleges have, and being able to go on their campus and see it before you get there. It's because it's a lot of money. You know, I do travel soccer. You know, to stay in a hotel, to eat and feed, and especially some of y'all, especially boys, oh man, I couldn't imagine. You know, but nonetheless, do those things. And these are 2 of our programs that we do: Coffee and Conversation, a 2 other virtual series for those parents who are looking to aid information in our next information, Parenting with Purpose and Perspective. So it's those type of things that we have. But then also this new series that we did this year is Middle Management, Surviving and Thriving Through the Middle School Years, Navigating Friendships, Peer Pressure, Helping Your Child Handling Shifting Social Circles, Cliques, and Conflicts. 2 new series that we're doing to help the middle school parent and help guide those individuals through those spaces. But nonetheless, you guys, I appreciate you all coming out. I'll end up sending this recording once it finishes. Again, Emily and Lauren, appreciate you for coming out tonight and helping us navigate the money of that we're doing. And again, reach out to anyone, to myself or your counselor to get continued help, or your grants representative. You guys be good, be great, be awesome. See you next time.